This is a revision video on Wordsworth's The Prelude, focusing on the ice skating episode. So the ice skating episode is one which recounts a childhood experience of ice skating during winter. It starts off with him with his friends on a frozen lake, and then he kind of takes himself away to have a quiet moment of reflection with nature, which is quite a common feature of romantic poetry. It follows the boat steaming episode and provides a sense of contrast. In the boat steaming episode, Wordsworth seems quite frightened, intimidated, awed by nature. In the ice skating episode, it's much more gentle, it's a tranquil reflection rather than a troubling fear. A lovely image taken from collections.wordsworth.org.uk, which I think really sums up the section of the poem. Is a really nice image just to kind of focus on with your revision as well. So how does Wordsworth use nature in this section? He looks at humans as animals and uses similes to compare the children on the ice to animals, horses, and comparing them to a hunt. Humans are joint with nature. There's no conflict. Things seem to be kind of accepted and happy and in a kind of state of balance and equilibrium. Emotions are revealed through nature. This is Wordsworth's autobiographical poem, and a lot of the emotions that he feels are revealed through his reflections on nature. Nature seems to have its own personality in the poem, and it's ever present in Wordsworth's Prelude, especially in this section. But it's ever present as a wintry scene, and also the mountains, and nature's kind of essence is always there. Poetic inspiration, and also imagination and reflection. And also nature is a source of power, although less so in comparison to the boat steaming episode. So this is the section that we're going to focus on, and I'll just read it very quickly in case you've never read it before. And in the frosty season, when the sun was set and visible for many a mile, the cottage windows through the twilight blazed. I heeded not the summons. Happy time it was, indeed, for all of us. To me it was a time of rapture. Clear and loud, the village clock told 6. I wheeled about, proud and exulting, like an untired horse that cares not for its home. All shod with steel, we hissed along the polished ice, in games confederate imitative of the chase and woodland pleasures, the resounding horn, the pack loud bellowing and the hunted hare. So through the darkness and the cold we flew, and not a voice was idle. With the din, meanwhile, the precipices rang aloud, the leafless trees and every icy crag tinkled like iron, while the distant hills into the tumult sent an alien sound of melancholy, not unnoticed, while the stars eastward were sparkling clear, and in the west the orange sky of evening died away. Not seldom from the uproar I retired into a silent bay, or sportively glanced sideways, leaving the tumultuous throng, to cut across the image of a star that gleamed upon the ice. And oftentimes when we had given our bodies to the wind and all the shadowy banks on either side came sweeping through the darkness, spinning still the rapid line of motion, then at once have I, reclining back upon my heels, stopped short, yet still the solitary cliff wheeled by me, even as if the earth had rolled with visible motion her diurnal round. Behind me did they stretch in solemn train, feebler and feebler, and I stood and watched till all was tranquil as a dreamless sleep. So beginning to look at the annotating this section of the poem. Again, there's many things that you could write other than what I'm going to talk you through today, so please don't see this as an exhaustive list of things to write about. So you've got the contrasted winter scene through the word blazed. So, and in the frosty season when the sun was set, it sets a really kind of nice wintry scene, quite relaxed. But the cottage windows, it's a very kind of rural, happy image, and they're kind of blazing in the distance, and it kind of gives a contrast between the light of the windows and the darkness of the twilight and of the gloom on the lake. Wordsworth says he heeded not the summons, so he doesn't care about what's going on in the village. He's quite happy to be out there on the ice with his friends and skating around. There's a communal enjoyment in this section of the poem, so it's not just Wordsworth on his own, at this stage at least, and you really get a sense of the joy that they have of being on the lake. So happy time, rapture, lots of language to describe his enjoyment of the ice skating. You've got enjambment, which kind of highlights exactly how happy he is, and does kind of sense that this is a little bit all about him, which is obvious as it's an autobiographical poem, but you've got happy time, it was indeed, but that slight pause after happy time really emphasises his enjoyment. To me, it was a time of rapture, that the pause after me suggests that he's kind of setting himself apart slightly from the other children, that he's kind of noticed something that maybe they haven't. The words highlighted in green, suggesting the idea of movement. This is a really vivid description, a really lively piece of writing. So you've got wheeled, shod, hissed and flew. It's the idea that nothing is static at the moment, that there's a real action on the scene. You've got the onomatopoeia and sibilants in addition to that kind of reflect the energy of the scene. So hiss along the polished ice in Gaines's Confederate. You've got a real sense of movement and of energy. It's really, you get the sense of excitement coming through, the kind of childish joy that Wordsworth is experiencing. Also using similes and metaphors to compare humans to animals. So proud and exulting like an untired horse. It's a different kind of pride to the preceding boat stealing section, where he's kind of proud of his ability in rowing. But this is kind of more raw. He's like an untired horse, so a horse that's slightly wild that hasn't yet been trained, possibly because it's a childhood incident, so he hasn't yet had any adult experiences. But the idea that it's slightly wild, slightly exciting. And in a similar vein, the idea of the hunt, the idea of chasing something, the idea of energy and excitement coming through once again. All the words in purple are anything to do with sound, and they're just a small selection. There's many more throughout this section. And they show the life and energy, they make it more realistic, and it's a real sensual description. You get the imagery as well, along with the colours and the visual imagery of kind of orange sky, sparkling clear, the idea of the stars. You've also got a really strong sense of the sound through the horn that's resounding, the children are bellowing, you've got the din, you've got the rang, and you've got the icy crag that's tinkling like iron. Interesting juxtaposition, interesting simile there, the use of tinkled, which is quite Christmassy, quite gentle, compared to the heavy metallic iron. So that's quite an interesting image to look at as well. In addition, you've got the power of nature and the barren winter scene, and they're still present, they don't go away. So despite all the enjoyment, despite all the human activity that's going on, you still have the icy crag to remind you of the winter scene, you have the distant hills, you have an alien sound, and you have melancholy, so slight sadness creeping in. And it's really important, Wordsworth writes, not unnoticed, so the presence of nature is still there, and it's never forgotten. Moving on to the second part of the section, you have a transition between the communal enjoyment, and now it's moving to a more kind of personal reflection for Wordsworth, and that was quite a strong feature of romantic poetry, so the idea of having a connection, very personal connection with nature. So he's already setting himself apart from other children. So saying, not seldom from the uproar I retired. So he does this quite commonly. He wants to go somewhere silent. He wants to leave the tumultuous throng behind, and he's kind of setting himself apart from other children, perhaps showing that he's already developed this appreciation and awe for nature at a younger age. You've got the alliteration, which emphasises his sudden stop. So that's the line where it says, have I, reclining back upon my heels, stopped short, yet still the solitary cliffs. It kind of emphasises how suddenly he's stopped. I've written it's diff to skiff there, so it's different to the boat stealing section where he steals the skiff, because in that scene you kind of get the impression that nature has stopped him in his tracks. He's been stopped because he's frightened and he wants to turn around and he's intimidated, whereas here it's Wordsworth that stops. He's got more of the power, and it's not nature that stops him, he stops to appreciate nature. Interesting, the use of the word wheeled, and it's a reversal of the earlier stanza we just looked at when Wordsworth was the one wheeling about. Now it's nature that's wheeling about him. So you've got this kind of joint experience, this really close connection with nature. And the ending of this section then is a real contrast to the ending of the preceding section of the boat stealing, where it really troubles him and stays with him. He describes it as trouble of my dreams. And a direct comparison then, you get this kind of cathartic diminuendo, to borrow a musical term. So it should be diminuendo, not diminuendo, where the music kind of dies away and you get a kind of decrease in volume, a decrease in pace sometimes as well. So it's a peaceful conclusion, contrasting to the end of the preceding section. The trouble of my dreams from before has now become as tranquil as a dreamless sleep. So this section then, Wordsworth referred to some of his childhood incidents as spots of time that stuck with him. And you get the sense that this is quite an ordinary activity that they took part in fairly frequently, but it's really stuck with him, and he's kind of reflected upon it in adulthood and come up with all the ideas and the imagery that he's written about now. And just to finish, it can be interesting to compare the two extracts that we've looked at. So both of them suggest the power of nature, and they have some kind of reflective element to them. They're both childhood experiences taken from very early in the Prelude. In the boat stealing section, nature can be seen as threatening. He's in an isolated place that he is a stranger to. He's having an unfamiliar experience. It's not somewhere that he knows, and he's quite frightened. It leaves a lasting impression on him. The ice skating section in comparison, nature is seen as invigorating, exciting. There's a very close connection there through describing the humans as animals, and then Wordsworth's personal connection later on in that section. And you've got the communal experience of the ice skating, moving to Wordsworth's private reflection on his ice skating, on nature, but you've always got the presence of nature really strong in that section.